It's that time again. We're going to test our sound tonight. Hello, Meredith.
Hello.
The weather turned glorious this week here in Rockford, Illinois. I was telling somebody today at Rudy's that it was just, how can you beat 45 degrees at 6 a.m. and 77 at 3 and then 65 by like 7:30? I mean, it just, to me, that's ideal weather. And it's a little San Diego, actually. That's sort of maybe my problem there. But yeah, let us know what sounds good.
Okay.
You're dealing with a headache this evening. I'm going to let everyone know that just ahead of time. So if she doesn't pipe in as much as normal, keep her in your prayers. She did take a Genexa for her headache. But Meredith's a trooper. She's always going on. But I wanted to boast in her a little bit. We'll be right back here with the start of Chapter 7.
What you're about to witness is one of the most sinister-sounding intros to a trailer to one of the greatest epics ever produced in the history of television.
Morning light sliced through the canyon, turning jagged ridges into gold and amber. Jonathan stood by the window, watching the day creep in, its warmth and brightness still distant. Behind him, the low fire crackled, filling the silence. It should have been comforting, but the world felt like the sun was rising on borrowed time. "A most dangerous game," Silas said, voice calm, from his corner near the hearth. It wasn't a question. Jonathan turned slightly, catching the glint in his dog tags, half hidden beneath Silas's jacket. "That's what Tony said. It sounded familiar." Silas nodded slowly. His fingers brushed a salt shaker, then moved it away. "It's an old story. You know it?" "Hunting people," Miley said, leaning back in his chair, the wood creaking under him. "Turning a man into prey. But come on, you think anyone's actually doing that today?" Silas's eyes flickered to Jonathan. "You're a marked man now. You've seen things you shouldn't have. And I know this. There are men alive with enough power, enough boredom, to invent new games. They don't just kill threats. They play with them. Make them run. Make them afraid. Then, at the end, they do it with a smile. Jonathan, this isn't just about the tablet anymore." Miley stood, hands sliding into his pockets. "Then we stay on the move. Boss wants me in London. We've got a contact there. The Russian. Could be our next lead." Silas shook his head. "If boss says so, fine. But running's part of their game. You can't win by running. You need allies." Miley crossed his arms. "What do you have in mind?" "I can protect you," Silas said. "There's a network at work here. Special ops. Off the books. I can bury you. Deep." Jonathan caught the grin tugging at his mouth. "No pun intended?" Silas chuckled. "No, I'm serious. I'm recruiting you. You made it this far. That's enough for me. But there's clearance involved. For now, I'm offering protection. A badge." Jonathan paused, weighing the offer. With Silas behind him, he'd have the support he needed. But he couldn't leave Miley hanging. "I'll take the badge," Jonathan said, eyes steady. "But I'm not sitting still with it. Boss says London, we go to London." Silas's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he pulled a folded piece of cloth from his jacket and tossed it across the room. Jonathan caught it, feeling the rough texture between his fingers. The fabric was worn, frayed at the edges. A cloud, split by a bolt of lightning, stitched into it. "What's this?" Jonathan asked. With a flick of his fingers, the influence display bloomed into view. Holographic layers hovered before him, translucent maps and signals pulsing in real time. The device adjusted automatically, brushing away unnecessary feeds, homing in on the encrypted signals and scanning the patch. "Your badge," Silas said. "Welcome to the Outlaws. Full faith and credit of the U.S. government, while it still stands. Your orders, don't wait. Act. Report your movements. I'll be in your ear when it counts. But understand, none of that matters if you get caught." Jonathan's influence scanned the patch, watching as the layers of data unfolded. Woven tech, cryptographic signatures, microcircuits that glowed faintly with verification codes. It was more than just an insignia. It was a dynamic key, built to verify clearance, authenticate identities, and trigger covert protocols across secure networks. Jonathan turned the patch over in his hands. I won't regret this. Silas's smile didn't reach his eyes. If you go dark, don't expect a rescue. Keep me informed, and we won't have to cross that bridge. Jonathan nodded, the weight of the patch heavier now. Miley grabbed his jacket, glancing at Jonathan with a forced smile. We're really doing this? Jonathan's mouth thinned to a line as the readout he was waiting for came up in the influence. I hunt the scum of the earth. Sailors, Lascars, blacks, Chinese, whites, mongrels. A thoroughbred horse or a hound is worth more than a score of them. What was that? Miley asked, frowning. General Zaroff. It's his most famous line from that story. Here's another. Life is for the strong, to be lived by the strong, and if need be, taken by the strong. The weak of the world were here to give the strong pleasure. Miley shook his head. Jesus. Amen, said Jonathan. Let's get going. The streets of London were slick with rain, cobblestones gleaming under the low glow of the street lamps. Jonathan led the way, influence data flickering like HUD readouts from the games he used to play, encrypted signals flashing through walls, tagging people with height, eye color, IQ, and a pulsing hypocrisy score that drained like a mana bar. Jonathan didn't care for that feature, but he hadn't found a way to turn it off yet. Behind him, Miley grumbled. Cabs would have been just as good as the underground. Jonathan chuckled. It was true. Almost there, he said, as they emerged from the alley onto Great Queen Street. Divine street lamps gleamed through the fog, and across the way, Freemasons' Hall loomed, dark and imposing, with bronze doors etched in ancient symbols, and a tall, square tower rising in carved symmetries. It sat like an overlord hunched within the city, in stark contrast to the sleek glass tower of the temple residences across the way, where their contact waited. Miley's gaze lingered at the large building. You know the stories, right? He said. Blood, shadow, fallen angels. It always sounded like too much. But now, seeing this. Jonathan shot him a sideways glance. Good thing we're only going next door. The glass doors hissed closed behind them, the lobby oozing wealth. Marble floors stretched the length, abstract art casting deliberate shadows, light, angled to command attention. A nod from the concierge acknowledged their presence, but he did not approach. What now? Jonathan asked. She knows we're coming, Miley shrugged. A few moments later, a send popped into Jonathan's vision. Proceed to the elevators. Clearance granted. Button 1117. You get that? Miley asked. Jonathan nodded. Let's go. The elevator was decked out in antique luxury. 100-year-old wallpaper matted between endless polished cherry beams. The buttons for the floors 1 through 9 were neatly in place, but button 10 was missing, leaving an empty hole where the backlight still flickered. She said 1117, right? There's not even a number 10. Where is 1117 supposed to be? Jonathan thought about it for a moment, his influence running quick scans of the buttons, searching for data that could help make sense of the problem. But before his artificial intelligence had time to come up with anything creative, it came to him. 1, 1, 1, 7. 1 3 times, he said. The elevator jerked to life, its belt wobbling and motor groaning, the kind of old-world nuisance only the ultra-wealthy could afford. Moments later, the doors slid open to the penthouse suite, a minimalist expanse of steel and glass, all sleek lines and sharp edges. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the fog-drenched London eye on the horizon. Neither the small seating area nor the impossibly modern kitchen softened the sterile atmosphere. The scent of chlorine from an indoor pool didn't help. Near one of the massive windows stood a slender woman, her back military sharp, hair in a tight knot. Come in, she acknowledged them, her reflection fragmented by the wide-rimmed glasses, her voice carrying the light ripples of a Russian accent. which I can't do very well, so I'm not going to try. We have much time, but little space, she said. Miley shrugged and held up the thumb drive from Boss, flipping it over in his fingers. I was told you'd know who I was, and that you'd want this. Jonathan scanned the room for data feeds. There was almost nothing to discover. The penthouse was barren. Beneath his feet, if he pressed the range, data appeared much more quickly, but there was too much to take in. Encrypted signals pulsed like a thunderhead about to burst. He blinked 3 times and powered the display down. Vieira turned, her lips tight. Boss always delivers, she said. Set it on the table. I'll look into it later. But right now, we need to talk about trust. Jonathan's brow furrowed. You need us, he said finally. She smirked, her eyes narrowing as she leaned back. I need you, she admitted, but her tone was far from conciliatory. The question is, do I trust you? Here, sit. She gestured toward the chairs as she moved to the table. Trust, Mr. Collar, is a luxury you cannot afford, she went on. You trust Miley, despite his secrets. He trusts Boss, but has never seen his face. Jonathan shot a glance at Miley, who shifted awkwardly. True, he admitted, but I haven't hidden anything. Exactly, Vera turned, her eyes gleaming. You should ask yourselves why you're here. Do you trust each other enough to risk your lives for this? Jonathan stayed quiet, studying her. She crossed the room, pulling a chair to the table. Born in Russia, sold at 12, MI6 at 22, cross-recruited by the GRU before I even had time to unpack. Now, I play both sides in the open, not because I like the game, but because they need me more than I need them. And us? Jonathan asked. She laughed. You need me, and if I trust you, it's because we're after the same thing. Jonathan folded his arms. We want the Moonstone. Do you? Vera raised an eyebrow. Have you heard of the Palace of Peace and Reconciliation? Miley snorted. Sounds like a fairy tale. No, Vera replied. It's real. A glass pyramid to symbolize global unity and interfaith harmony, erected in Astana, Kazakhstan. It houses many things your world cannot imagine. But next week, it'll play host to the most dangerous auction in the world. Jonathan's pulse quickened. Auction? 3 days from now, she went on, the tablet that the outlaw lost will be auctioned off, along with another hoard, along with a small hoard of other relics. The Moonstone won't be listed officially, but it'll be there, exchanged under the radar and for a much higher price. Jonathan looked to Miley. No one there will be your friends, Vera continued. Some will be there to bid. Some will be there to kill. You will tread on the adder and the scorpion, no? Isn't that what your God says, Mr. Collar? What's in it for you? Miley asked, frowning. Vera's eyes gleamed. I prefer the world intact. The people bidding on the Moonstone plan to wreak havoc on a global scale. If you stop them, we both win. My home, my world, everything stays intact. The auction will take place in the upper chamber. Eyes will be focused on the bidding. But in the real auction is underground, where the relics are stored. You'll get in there, scan the port orders of both tablets, and both the tablet and the Moonstone. Miley's grin widened. We don't steal it, we follow their trail. She grinned, self-satisfied. Your job is to pressure the real buyer. Expose him. Then we'll know who's pulling the strings. Miley grinned. I like it. I thought you might. Vera's Russian accent curled around the edges of her words. There's one final question. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. What's that? Do you trust me yet? Jonathan squinted, his gaze sharpening. Excuse me, but after all of this, I think I had better. If I'm going to go breaking and entering the capital occult warehouse of Kazakhstan for you, we'd at least better pretend to be friends until we're done. He smiled. She laughed. It was a pleasant sound in that wide-open space, the windows slick with rain, the city fog, a brooding shell kept at bay by the sharp power of stone and wood. Good. She placed a small vial on the table, its liquid gel glowing faintly yellow. What's that? Miley asked, eyes narrowing. Insurance, Vera said, her tone cool, deliberate. Scan it as you like. You will find it is a supratoxin neutralizer. A what? Miley looked between them, confused. A universal antidote, Jonathan said. He examined the vial with a naked eye. My own personal recipe, she said. Mostly salt and a little light. Out on the rain-slicked streets, the vial in his pocket and deep waters powered on. He set the scan to working, but he already knew she told the truth. Beside him, Miley shifted, looking uneasy. Kazakhstan? Moonstones? Antidotes? This is some serious next-level spy stuff, he muttered. He glanced sideways at Jonathan. I've been training for this for years. That's what I haven't told you about. Boss, and how deep I'm in. We're winning the war, Jonathan. That's why this matters. But are you ready for this? This will be more than a class full of three-stripe white belts. Do you really want to pull this off? Before Jonathan could answer, Ms. Nera's send bloomed into his influence. It said, Internal memo from Interpol flags one Jonathan Collar as a suspected smuggler. My GPTs forecast international travel in Western nations will be closed tonight, if not sooner. Watch your back. What's the matter? Miley asked, noticing the stunned look on Jonathan's face. I'm going to be arrested when I try to fly home. Then it's a good thing this Uber is going to take us to a private flight Vera booked us. I've never even flown first class before. You can eat all the cookies you want, Jonathan said. He laughed aloud. Here's our man here. Miley, Jonathan held his arm before he got in the car. How am I getting back from Kazakhstan? With your shield or on it, my brother, he laughed, and jumped in the back seat. You know, he said, Mullen Labe and all that. My spirit being overwhelmed within me, Jonathan sighed, looking up at the looming shadow of Freemason's Hall, brooding over him in the misty darkness, before he joined him. Let's play a game called StarFall 2029. Well, they're all losing their minds. You will remember that your weapon is your mind, and your fuel is the word. Burn fewer bridges, pass more walls, and tend your nets, ye fishers of men. Today is the day of justice. Today is the day of judgment. Today is the day of Jubilee. Mixed messages is the essence of both social media, dysfunctional relationships, and mind control tactics. It's a fact. I'm your host, Jonathan McAdam Fisk, Magistrate Divinitatis, and we are brought to you, as always, but now promoting full-time by Dark Shore Not-for-Profit Corporation, dedicated to promoting the Psalms and Proverbs in Jesus' name as period, what we need, period, what we need for lots of good reasons. There's a whole 8 pages I told the federal government about, and they liked it enough to say, okay. Yeah, it involves the Hebrew Collegium as a gap year Bible school for men here in Rockford, Illinois, and we have 1 year, count it 1 year, to raise $40,000, or I'm going to shut it down. because I've put like plenty of my life into this. We've got another donor who's put plenty of his life into this. My wife has put her life into this. Neighborhoods put our lives into this. We love it. It's good. The boys here right now, they're wrestling across the street on their own because they love jiu-jitsu so much. Isn't that amazing? These kids who are going to head to Luther Classical next year, they're going to head to the seminary next year. We're building brotherhood and fraternity in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod with interceding faith relationships. They ran into these guys last week. I can't believe this story. They ran into these guys. They go to a swing dancing lesson at a local church. I mean, I was kind of like a nerd, okay? That's where I was. Okay, that's me. I'm a nerd too. But that's where I was. And they come back like doubling their pod size, right? So we send away our little squad of orcas, and they come back with 5 more orcas, right? And then they're all like the same age, and like there's 3 Catholics, an Eastern Orthodox, and a Baptist, and they all want to learn jiu-jitsu on Sunday afternoon. It wasn't that a great time. They're coming over, some of them, this night, right now. They're hanging out. Why? Because the establishment of a place for Christian men of virtue to pursue their faith in action as young men without being derided, talked down to, mitigated, minimalized, and matrilinealized is lacking. It's hard to find. And so when it shows up, the people who find it know what it means. It opens their eyes. It changes their life just a bit. And again, Darkshore exists to make this happen. So if you would like to help this continue and not see the Hebrew Collegium go away, do reach out to me through madpxm.com/contact. Yeah, or through spa15.org and ask for a Darkshore support packet, a Hebrew Collegium support packet, and we will reach out to you so that this good work, helping others build their ark, can continue retracting forward as the rainbow always does. That said, it is good for you to know that this show, while being done for the sake of Darkshore, please join us, is also brought to you by me and my wife Meredith and my family and us here in Rockford, Illinois. So if you do want to support us in all that we do, we don't get paid a dime by Darkshore. I don't take a dime. I get jiu-jitsu lessons. That's my paycheck, okay? And it's good. I'm happy to do it because this is a dream of my life to create this space. So I want to give it away, right? But it's really helpful in these times to put food on the table for my kids, et cetera, et cetera. You know the ring rang. You know how it goes. I mean, if Tucker Carlson can ask you for money, I think I can, right? So if you'd like to support Meredith, I, and the kids here in Rockford, you can definitely do that separately from Darkshore. Darkshore is like on the front burner. We're always here. Subscribestar.com/RevFisk is the place to really do that now. And of course, you can subscribe at RevFisk.com for my subscriber package. You get a little bit extra in our now weekly Ziklag newsletter. Today, sent out this week's really excited, the story of Jonathan's climb from 1 Samuel told through the names. Oh, hold on. Let me give you this so you can see it on the screen. Those of you who are watching at home, get a little bit of your idle moment here. Here we go. A nice picture. There's Jonathan's climb. Jonathan's climb through and past the 2 treacherous rocks of Bozez and Senna, and understanding how the names in the Bible come to mean things. A whole section on blindness in the Bible, from judgment to restoration, taking you through blindness as an Old Testament covenantal curse from God into what it means when Jesus shows up and talks to the Pharisees about being blind. And then after that, I really love this article. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but up, down, roundabout, the hokey pokey of scriptural direction as historical curiosity. Do you know there are languages that go left to right? Do you know there are languages that go right to left? Do you know there are languages that go up to down? Do you know there are no languages that go down to up? But there are languages that have gone left, right, left, right, left, right. Yeah, that's what that article's about. So I love this stuff. This is what makes me excited at 4 a.m. in the morning. I don't know why. And you actually get a publication of The Witch Doctor from last week. It's got some typos, so beware. But the actual text of last week's chapter is there for you in this week's Ziklag. And then below the paywall, you'll find not only, you can't see it on this right now. Below the paywall, you'll find not only a tree, if you pay for the tree, but today, every single time, to my knowledge, and I made it check twice, every single time that Saul, king of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, speaks in the book of 1 Samuel, he doesn't speak anywhere else in the Bible. At least not in the histories, okay? And so every time he speaks is listed in both English and Hebrew. And it's counted up, and then at the end, when I'm like, I'm not so sure, you counted right, robot. The robot counts again, so you actually find out, and then it lists them without reference. You can just get the list as well. All 42 times King Saul says something in the book of 1 Samuel. I have plans for what I'm going to do with that. That's just my notes from random. And maybe I don't get there, but, it's there for you as Ziklag. And again, while you're there, you can subscribe as a paying subscriber. $8 a month is one way to support us here in Rockford. StarFall 2029 is a storytelling, live-action, role-playing gamification of discipleship by biblical literacy. Right on, right? You getting it? You hearing it these days? In the fine radio tradition of Orson Welles, with a true Scots understanding of George Orwell and a touch of Joe Rogan, the Bible answer man for spice. Nothing says crazy like an actual planned coming, initially life-ending, but probably nothing astronomical event like Apophis, the rock that is flying toward between us and the moon very quickly, and even making the news in the last couple of weeks. I don't have any links this week about Apophis specifically and itself. Oh, I'm losing my... I do have some links to share with everybody in the world of linking. Oh, and actually, it is in the crisis management side of life. How can we not recognize and talk about the events in North Carolina where the act of God is what the insurance companies call these things? The act of HARP, the multi-government scientific weather-bending experiment that the conspiracy theorists call these things. I think that's a bit much. The loss of life that's happening in North Carolina is unequivocally clear. The failure of the federal government to be able to do anything of meaning while obviously doing other things of meaning that cost lots of money is also abundantly clear. And so the wrath of God against us as a people, I think, should also be abundantly clear. I'm not trying to blame anybody in North Carolina. I'm saying the whole planet should repent. Let's start with the U.S. I'm in Illinois. We're going to repent. Rockford, St. Paul Lutheran Church. There we go. I know I got a team on my side somewhere, right? Let's repent. Because Jesus, what a disaster. Airspace closed down so the federal political hoo-hoos can fly in and tour the area while rescue chapters are downed. People that are driving there to help being turned away, saying give to FEMA while FEMA won't help. The citizens getting $700 a piece while at the border you get $2,000 or some odd. Again, I can't keep track of it all. And I'm not even saying I believe it all. I'm saying I'm praying about these people. That's what I'm saying. And that this kind of disaster deserves real help, and I maybe have got, I'll make sure I get the name right here. Perkinsville Church. Perkinsville Church for Boone and Beyond is a bona fide real congregation through our network of trusted you, Christians, listeners, fans, followers, brothers in arms, found by one of you who I trust, and so I will promote it without knowing more than that. If you would like to help as best you can through a Christian organization on the ground in North Carolina right now, Perkinsville Church at perkinsville.org/give is a place to start. Okay, so absolutely go there and do something if you feel the need to do something financially about this issue. There are many, many, many such issues going on right now. While we're over there in the links from you and around the world sphere, I'm going to share with you this little bit from Nick Freitas, and I'm going to make sure I tell you who he is before I share it with you. Nick Freitas is a Republican politician serving as a delegate in the Virginia House of Delegates. He represents District 30. He's been there since 2015. He's a former U.S. Army Green Beret. Oh, baby. He served 2 tours in Iraq and was honorably discharged in 2009. He became involved in Virginia politics, advocating conservative values, limited government, individual liberty, pro-life policy. He's known for his strong support of Second Amendment rights. He opposes overregulation, high taxes. I mean, he's sounds like an old school Republican of sorts. Garnered attention through viral speeches defending conservative positions, particularly on gun rights and individual freedoms. Hosts making the argument. Okay, so here's just a little quip from him. I got to get back to the right place. A little quip from him talking about something that I have just had happen enough in my life that is just so real. And the show's about it. I pray I'm not whining. I don't want to whine. But I want to say what he's saying here, because at a certain point, the men are just going to stop listening. So while you're dealing with those of us who are still listening, you might want to hear what we have to say. And here's what Nick has to say.
Every single time. I don't know how much content I've done on being a girl dad or how much I love my wife or, what a great mother she is. The moment I put out any content about the importance of the relationship between a father and a son, I will get a comment like this. And I don't get it. It's like this instant need to diminish the
All right, let me go back, and I forgot about that part. Let me go back and read what he says. So he says, I get a comment like this, and he scratched out who said it. She says, easy for a man to say this to all the women who left abusive relationships, whose husbands died, left them or abandoned their kids. Guess what? Your kids need one present parent to thrive. That's it. Proven in study after study. So that's what she said. Here, he says this then again.
It's like this instant need to diminish the father's role in a child's life, or to suggest that I was somehow disparaging single mothers. Yeah, I was primarily raised by a single mother. I mean, thank God my dad was still an important part of my life, but I got to see him 3, maybe 4 months out of the year tops. So here's an idea. If you would like to go through life believing that fathers don't play an important role, that all your children need is one dedicated parent, what I'm going to tell you is this. Yeah, that might be all they need to survive. But maybe you should start asking questions about what they need to thrive instead of engaging in what looks a little bit like cope.
Asking questions about what is needed to thrive in the context of fatherhood being something that we absolutely need. And if every time we lift up our voice and say, hey, fathers, we go, what about the women? Well, then we won't have any fathers stepping up until the young man, again, decide to stop listening. And I'll go on the record. I'll say this. I've observed this. I think I'm very much in the middle. I have been defending what you would call biblical marriage since I remember arguments in 2007 with my father about this is like just man and woman stuff before we even get into the rainbow flag. Like it's not even on the horizon of our country's debate yet. Okay. And I'm advocating the conservative position. I'm advocating the conservative place. And yeah, as I have gotten older and come of age, I found that I was still more groomed by my society than I realized in certain opinions or actions, right? I was easily bent by a female emotion to subservience. I'll say it that way. And I've kind of striven to not be that without being a jerk about it. Right? It's been my goal, is to grow up, actually, is the way I see it. But what I'm noticing is that the guys below me, they're just not going to take it at all. They're done. They're done. They've checked out. They're not listening. You think they're listening. They're lying. And the barbarians that are growing up underneath your feet, well, beware, ladies, as you continue to not hear the men say they need fathers. They need fathers. They need fathers. And that doesn't mean they need their mothers harping on the fathers to be fathers. It doesn't mean that either. It might mean less fluoride would help everybody. Would you know? Several U.S. cities hit pause on water fluoridation in wake of historic federal ruling. A news story from today, kept under the radar probably in many places. Several U.S. cities... Vigilant Fox found this one. Several U.S. cities, towns, and countries announced they will stop fluoridating their water in the aftermath of a landmark federal court ruling that found water fluoridation at current levels poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. This has been known for some time. This is known. You can go read on this. This is known, right? This is very, very known. Abilene, Texas, Yorktown and Summers, New York, Weber Basin Water Conservatory District, Utah. Okay, so that's the list. The ruling ruled that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, can no longer ignore the risk fluoridation poses to humans, especially children's health in the drinking water. Now, we're not talking about your toothpaste in this article. We're not talking about your fluoride treatment at your dentist, okay? We're talking about drinking fluoride without knowing it because they put it in your water with a bunch of other stuff so that the poop that they filtered out doesn't kill you. And stuff. I mean, it's not exactly like that, but what they're doing in the water filtration, you should look into. It's Culligan, man. I mean, I don't know what else to say, right? That's what I got to say. So see this though. This is good. Some small cities in rich neighborhoods are like, let's stop. Okay. So I already promoted redfist.com. We got enough of that here now. I want to get back to you. We went to the side because of Apophis, because of the scary, scary news. Oh, the scary, scary news. And Apophis, that giant rock hurtling between us and the moon in 2029, April 13th. It's far enough away that it only makes the news cycle as a fear-mongering tactic sometimes. Not as often as war with Iran, which continues to be something that is totally being pushed. We will maybe be there soon, in fact. And maybe more on that here in a little bit. But to remember then, what's the point of StarFall and Apophis, is to remember that all of these stories are being used by them to control and manipulate you. And so before you get too scared about any one of them, if it's not outside your window, compare it to Apophis and let yourself giggle a little bit and then take it seriously in Jesus' name and do what needs to be done. But understand that the crisis isn't a crisis till the tree's actually brown. And the tree's not quite brown yet, however many what locusts there may be coming our way, that kind of thing. So if I can just go off for a minute here on the side, I think that the issue of U.S. government proxy state bioweapon development against all of the codes and stuff might be the most likely thing our enemies like blow back on us. So I'm praying about that. I'd have you join me. I also do think that the existence of the office of the Pope as the universal end times Antichrist explains almost everything that's going on right now. Not quite, but exactly. You Jesuit scum and all that. But what do I mean by this? Well, here, I got a couple things on this one this week. One is this. Try this one on. Like, have you ever tried to say the Pope's the Antichrist and someone be like, that's not nice? You ever had that game? Like it's not nice to call the devil mean or something, right? Excuse me. I mean, he's only selling your forgiveness of sins for hundreds of years while people starve, building his pyramids. He didn't have a pyramid. He's building his the rest of it. There is a monolith there. Try this on next time. You're going to have to say the Pope's the Antichrist and you don't know how to say it. Just say this. Say, the Pope's not a Christian. Just say that. Like next time you're like with a Catholic and the Catholic's like, yeah, Catholic, this is good, Jesus, and we're the best, and we're Catholic, triune God, Michael, Mary, la, la, la. Say, but the Pope's not a Christian. And just like wait for them to hang themselves with whatever they say next, because whoever was a Christian in Benedict's time is not our Pope now. And I'd like to see him prove himself a Christian to the rest of the world. Let's have a council. He can stand on court, and the bishops from the East can quiz him in front of the rest of us. Get a couple Baptist preachers in there. Lutherans don't even have to say a word. We'll listen. We'll watch. Yeah, the Pope's not a Christian. The Pope is a king. The Pope is the Emperor of Rome, claiming to be the Son of God's vicar on earth to distract you from the Bible, and probably run an international tricky, slicky, wicked ring. Think Epstein's Island and beyond. Ye fuchsia mafia. I always call them that. It's lavender mafia. And if you don't know that one, Google it. There's a whole excommunicated cardinal with a whole following of conspiracy, yada, yada on his own right. You know what? They're pretty kooky. I get it. I'd be kooky too. If I worked my entire life to become a cardinal in the Catholic Church in my 70s and found out it was a pedophile ring, I'd say something and die for it too. I would. I wouldn't sit there and take it. Are you kidding me? So all I'm doing, check it out. Look, I'm sitting here in 2012, graduated from the seminary. That's way later. I'm sitting there in 2008, graduated from the seminary in New Jersey in a coffee shop, City Spot Coffee. I hope you're still there. I'm sitting there reading my confessions like a diligent little missionary every day. I got through the whole Book of Concord again. It was like my third time through, right? Loving this stuff. And so I remember vividly the claims about the Roman Catholic monasteries and the hanky-panky that was a bad thing and evil and wicked in Rome at the city, like the prostitution and the slavery. It was all there in the Luther. It's in our confessions. It's only 500 years ago. I know that Revolutionary War apparently changed everything and we got TVs. But okay, so you have this issue of the Emperor of Rome who's kind of running the world through his bank and kind of not because his bank's owned by, oh wait, this is going to sound more and more like the book of Revelation, like the beast out of the land, if the reader understands. I mean, you have to think twice, but it's right there. And it's very obvious. And these things are continuing as they have, only now on a new epic scale in which it seems to me the game is to diminish the Protestant capacity of the United States of America. You want to know who's losing right now? It ain't the Catholics. I mean, they are. They're not as good as they... But that's not true. They're so much bigger than they were. You go back 50, 70 years, how many Catholics there were in America compared to now? So much bigger than they were. Who's fallen away? Protestants. Why? Bible. Guarantee it. It's an attack from the evil one. Doesn't even need to have a human in charge, but you think there aren't a few who figured it out by now? I mean, if they're actually working with demons and worshiping them, and I'm not saying I know who is, but like, I know there's like books about it at Barnes and Noble, okay? So I'm pretty sure somewhere toward the top, the Kabbalists are actually into cabal, all right? And so what are they doing up there? Do they know what they're doing? It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that I want to be wise to the ways of the wicked so I don't walk in their paths. You follow? I want to understand that the way of the righteous is justified by a God who sets my steps so that I can lift my head and walk with integrity and not be cast aside by their silly stories. Let the story that I've been given of my resurrection in Jesus reign every single day. And again, see that if we want to have a unified front, maybe we Protestants should start working together, at least at pointing out that the Pope's not a Christian, because it really would you think it wouldn't unify the church if he preached Christ? I think it would. Let's get him to. Why not? Let's see if he can in his Portuguese. I'm going to skip that one for now. We're already like well into this, aren't we, Meredith? I'm going. Yeah, we'll be right back. That's not enough music. We need more music. That's not enough music. What are we going to do? I need a break. Where's the music? There we go. All right, let's try this again. We're here with Stop the White Noise with Jonathan and Meredith. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Meredith.
And we're going to talk about Christian family parenting as well as your questions and Bible answers. If you would like to get your question on the show, you can leave it in the comments. We sometimes get there, or they make it into a latter show, but you can always send those questions ahead of time to madpxm.com/contact. And while you're there, sign up for Mad Christian Mondays. Every Monday, you get Christian news filtering by Christians for free, straight to your inbox. It is the way to know what's going on in the world if you want a clear read with multiple sources, a unifying voice, telling the news with the only spin being that, well, Jesus is risen from the dead and we're pro-life. So we're not going to tell you a different story than that. That's for sure. Meredith, how's your head?
Oh, it's doing okay. Yeah, not quite gone. I don't think I've had enough magnesium lately.
This is true. You've not been taking the baths. Yeah, which is something I've learned from you the hard way as well. Like I do better if I get them in a regular cycle. And for the listener, you know, the cost of Epsom salts is so small compared to the benefit of proper magnesium balance in your lymphatic system. And it doesn't matter what you eat, who you think you are, how healthy you are, you're probably underbalanced in magnesium because supplementing it orally is very, very hard because we don't digest it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, we do, but we don't. We don't get much. And so the best way to get it is through the skin. And you can go out, you can find sprays that are very expensive. Or you can pour some salt in a tub and put your feet in it. Or take a bath, which is more work and time. And in fact, so relaxing you might fall asleep. And so it does take longer than you planned. Often it makes it difficult to work into things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it'll be okay. I'm okay.
We should have set one up for you here. That would have been wise.
I thought about that. I thought, I should be soaking my feet right now. But yeah, it's been, this summer has been a really odd one for me as different things have occurred in the home that threw my very steady rhythm quite out of whack. So I'm just trying to find that still.
Right. Well, the bathroom continues to be
it is going
quest.
to be a majestic
quest
piece of art.
It will be.
When it's done. It is just beautiful what is taking place with the resources that we're able to provide. That you're providing for it. So no, it's becoming what it is, and it's going to bless us. And it is blessing us. It's blessing our family and our friends who have been donating their time to helping us get it done. That type of loving service is just incredible. And so we feel the blessing, and then they have reassured us over and over again that being in our home and watching our family interact is a special treat. And that's a gift to me. That is what I have always wanted my home to be for people. A place of welcome, a place of comfort, and a place of refuge. And so it's a gift to know that is what it provides for others.
Yeah. Hearing the same thing about how our children, as the product of our marriage, have blessed others with not just like, oh, look, nice kids, and on you go, but a relationship that's built over a couple of weeks in a special situation. And how their Christianity and their way of handling their walk, which involves thorns and thistles and trials, and their joy at the work, their willingness to be involved and help, their creativity, all kind of results of our homeschooling, right? All results of our approach to parenting. And so seeing that happen is a joy, because as if you listened last week, our home isn't exactly without trial, and our marriage has never been without trial. And so it's easy enough as a parent to fear that your ghosts are going to be so deep in your kids that they'll never leave behind the baggage that you brought with you. And I think that kind of talk, I think most people have that if they're honest with themselves about it. And so anytime you hear from another adult that your child is acting as you have prayed, it is a relief to your soul, because I don't know, maybe for others, like the results of your kids growing up isn't sort of the biggest, most important thing in your life. But for me, I mean, it really is. And it's not just a vanity thing on Judgment Day, although that definitely plays a part, in the terror of the matter. Is like, if anything says anything about you on the day, it's what do your kids believe? And so my prayer has been, dear God, help me. I don't have it in me to be good enough to get them to believe what I believe. I barely am holding on. It's how it's always felt and always does feel day by day as my walk. I wake up and wonder if I'm loved. And so to see that them facing the same sin, the same house, with knowledge that they're loved is just, and giving that to someone else who's going to share that with his family. Their family, and in parenting. That's what the school's for. That's what Hebron's for. And that's where this whole bathroom thing, it's been tough for me. Like you have two sides of it. Like charity's a good thing, but anyone who's out there knows, like at a certain point you feel like you should pay something, right? But then you're a pastor. And so there's this historic thing called parsonage, wherein like the church owns the building so that this stuff gets done just like this, actually. But now we're in this weird scenario where all the churches sold their parsonages 40 years ago for the benefit of the pastors who retired, not for those of us who are in it now. And yet those of us who are in it now do have to try to have land. And if we do, it's better or worse depending on your loan, et cetera, et cetera. But then you end up in a situation with a building you can't necessarily care for, in the sense of like, I can't put a $30,000 bathroom into this house, which is what you got to do if you're going to do it well. You can put a $10,000 one in that's going to be built of all the stuff that everyone out there, right, that everything you bought the last 3 years is cheaper built than it was 10 years ago, right? Like it's just really obvious. If you build right now, you're just going to get junk. I mean, you have to be careful. I'll tell the story about what he's doing. He's putting up some wood paneling in the closet. It's cedar. It's going to smell amazing. It's beautiful. He's opening the packages and there's like 6 or 7 lengths in each package, and he takes them out, and he only gets maybe one out of each package, and he's repackaging and sending them back because they're not straight.
Right.
They're not even. And there's a point at which that's acceptable, and there's a point at which you're just not getting the product that you're being sold. And so again, how do you fix a bathroom for a family of 7 on a limited income, and then as a pastor, well, the answer is Jesus sends you someone who you didn't expect to do it. That's what happens again and again. And then that's tied into, again, Hebron. So we're building a school for men to teach men. And then here under our feet, we have this disaster that turns into the catalyzation of multiple teaching opportunities, multiple relationships, while we get to just kind of host it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We just host it. And it's a little longer or not. I mean, I really don't think this long on a bathroom is unnormal. I've worked with enough contractors. This is pretty normal as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's good that you're at that place, because when you took the Sawzall to the old bathtub, I knew.
I was worried.
Okay, we're in this now.
Well, so what I learned from that, I was just thinking about that in the shower yesterday. Because that shower in there supposedly has the same problem that this other shower does, but it doesn't, because what I learned is that the 2 or 3 different answers we got from contractors weren't the right answer as to why there was a leak. And so I know, again, what I knew before. Contractors don't always know what they're doing or saying, and their timetables aren't always what they promise. And so to have someone who shows up all the time working on the event, I'm like, good. This is enough for me. Like,
absolutely.
So hallelujah to that. But it has put I don't know how to say it. It's like it's impossible to have your private space be public and not feel it. And so for the family to do that daily for a time, right? And then this conversation came out of like, how are you? And it's like, having to really decide to focus on certain things because other things are hard, like disorder, right? For you specifically, yeah. And you want to say, I mean, I was running off of what you said and kind of giving to them your pain that I've seen, but.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel that the order has been somewhat band-aided. We've put a Band-Aid on things. We have a space. So yeah, like your personal desire for a different kind of workspace and a different kind of living space for you as a human coincided with the bathroom becoming unusable in the late spring, early summer. And so there was a somewhat of a temporary bathroom scenario set up. Thankfully, we have 2.5 bathrooms in this home. So it's not like we don't have 2 toilets. We do have 2 toilets. God be praised for that. But then, like, where does all this stuff go? And, your desire to change where the studio was opened up that space. So we do have functioning spaces in our house. It's not like it's not like we have towels in the dining room and,
No, but
Q-tips in the kitchen.
Everything's a little bit waiting on a closet returning, so that
Yeah.
there's a room that can stop being a closet that can
Right.
then become a room that can,
So,
Yeah.
So that chaos is more or less overlookable for me. But then as you shifted your routine, it kind of shifted my routine. Because even if the husband, even if the man does not get the recognition socially, I believe, as I observe it, he still is the leader of the home in a more what is the word that we always attribute to cats and dogs? It's like instinctual way. So like when the wife changes something in the routine, it can cause ripples, but it's not nearly going to ripple as much as if the husband does or if the father does. You see this in Ken Ham's research, Already Gone, with kids going to church every single Sunday. If the mother brings them to church and Sunday school every Sunday of their childhood, they are less likely to continue going to church than a father who brings the kids to just church without Sunday school every single Sunday or somewhat regularly. That is way more impactful on them
If I recall,
as beings.
You're absolutely right. If I recall, if the father brings a kid to church, and if the father brings a kid to church and Sunday school, they're better off just going to church. That's the point of the book.
Mm-hmm.
The study shows that if you went to Sunday school at all, like you're probably not in church. And it asks, why is that? And then people are like, I don't believe it. And that's the history of that book. But
yeah, and I think that
the role of the father that you're driving at is very much established as well. And the fact that the jump between mother pressure and father pressure on church attendance is like, college sports and pro sports. It's just such a difference.
Absolutely. And so I guess I'm making an intuitive leap, or I'm leaping over in this, that I believe that we can see the impact that fathers have on the family if we just step back and look. If a mother roots for a sports team, it's not really going to carry over as far or as deeply as if a father does. And that's just God's design. So changing your routine has changed my routine. And so now I'm still trying to figure out, what is my new routine? And I really haven't figured out where soaking my feet in Epsom salts while I wait for a bathtub to be finished goes.
Right. Well, jumping in as my kind of semi-personal assistant at church, probably, talk about new routines.
Yep.
That's a new routine. So yeah. Minor headache, magnesium, all that.
Yeah. We went to help. So I had a woman approach me and say, I would really like to help make quilts for Hebron. I heard your plea, and I'm a little nervous about it because I haven't ever made a quilt without a kit before. So the whole, here are the colors, you be creative, was very new to her. And she said, would you be willing to help me pick out fabrics so that then I can just go and do and pretend like I got a kit in the mail?
That's really cool, though. I like that.
So by the way, if anybody out there is a quilter, likes to make quilts, we are hoping to provide our guests, our residents more long-term residents, at Hebron with a quilt. Currently, they get just kind of a very basic bedding set that works just fine, but in the colder months, it's not quite as warm as maybe somebody would want it to be. But also the idea of coming to Hebron, being wrapped in God's word, being wrapped in community, diving deep into who you are and what God's plan is for you. This quilt idea is that then you take the quilt with you once you leave Hebron. So if anybody is interested in contributing to this project, we are definitely in need and will always be in need as long as Hebron is open. So please go through madpxm.com/contact to reach out to me, Meredith, and I will get you set up. But is there something you would like to interject?
If you got something, remember.
Okay, so anyway, I was at Joann Fabrics.
That's right.
Talk about decision fatigue.
Yes.
There's so much going on at these craft
Every
stores.
fabric, everything, anywhere. It's like, dear heavens.
Yeah.
Give me one color to stare at. There, I'll look at this one.
Right.
I won't look anywhere else. I'll just look at these puppies.
We go to Joann's, and then it was like, we live far enough away from quote unquote the city or town that when I go over to that side of town, I want to make it worth it. So I kind of do all the errands. And so we had Joann's on our list, and then we had Hobby Lobby on our list too. And Jonathan, the Christmas decorations are out, and they're already on clearance sale.
That's awesome. That's a lie.
Christ
it's a lie.
have
It's
mercy.
a trick.
I looked over.
First week on clearance.
I know. It's just like, I looked over at one of the end caps, and my heart fell. There were literally plastic ornaments that were in the shapes of different foods. And I picked up a French's mustard container. I was like, Chloe, this just doesn't say Christmas to me. It's already starting, where my heart just starts to.
You might be redneck if,
We can just
some
give you
mustard on
our
your
French's
tree.
mustard containers.
I'll tell you, I'll take your French's
mustard.
Heinz ketchup themed Christmas tree over what are they, 12-foot tall skeletons I'm seeing in people's
Christ
yards,
have mercy.
non-blow up permanent like death things. It's like,
I love it.
Again, I try really hard not to let myself become an iconoclast as an artist. I don't want to think I've been making idols this whole time and they're like, I'm going to be punished at the end of time. I don't think that's quite right. I think that's how it works. And yet I am watching these idols in people's yards and their death, wicked demon things they put up every year.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse. It's getting weirder. I tell you, there's the one locally that's not a skeleton. It's this guy with the hat over on whatever road over to the north side of, I can't even talk.
I'm curious about this hat. I was stuck on our neighbors.
Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Complaints, Our Lady of
Sacred Heart,
local Catholic praying to Marys.
And praying to the Pope now.
Better there than Boylan, probably. I mean, local Rockford fight. Hey,
I think
north of that. What was I talking about? North of that,
there's a hat.
There's a house.
Somebody with a hat.
This is so weird. Okay. This house used to be in our neighborhood. It used to be that if you walked our back route to the woods and to our friends' homes where the pool is, you'd pass this house with a statue in front of it of a man wearing a hat. And he kind of looks like George Bush Sr., but no way. It's actually a statue of George Bush Sr. But see, it's
Uncle
not George Bush.
Sam.
Is that who that is? Is Uncle Sam?
Supposed to be
There's
Uncle
no
Sam.
beard. He's supposed to have a white beard. That's not Uncle Sam. So I don't know. They may think it's Uncle Sam, but that's not Uncle Sam.
So this house now has something else.
They moved.
Oh, they moved.
Because the same statue is now outside of a house on the road after Our Lady of the Sacred Praying to Marys.
Oh,
and you go north and then go right to get to
Goodwill.
Our Land of Hobby Lobbies. Yeah. And all that. It's like right there on the road, standing there. And it's like on this hill. So like they've got it tied, so it's like leaning forward and they got two things holding it back so it won't fall forward.
Don't fall over.
And it's this statue what is it made of? Is it paper mache? It lasts through the water. It's 12 feet tall. How is this and this is someone cares enough about their ideology, their hopes for somebody who's dead. What is this? I mean, I'm not trying to say every statue is an idol. I'm asking, do you see how it's in us and we just kind of do it? And there's a reason God was like, y'all stupid. You're worshiping creation. Right?
Yeah, so you can hang Doritos bags on your Christmas tree this year, your fake Christmas tree.
Just make sure there's no tartarazine in the Fritos.
Yes.
I
Yellow dye.
I had a nice chat about
40?
fear mongering with one of our visitors last week. He was listening to that part, and he has a giant container of tartarazine.
Cheetos.
No, of the actual chemical in his chem lab that he has to work with because it's very commonly used for showing, making stuff show up in
absolutely.
So
Yeah, they were like, oh, I don't know what the commercial talked about, but they were like, oh, it was so successful in dyeing this one thing that you would never, ever eat in your whole life.
I'm pretty sure it was the road.
Yellow.
I think it was the road.
We'll put it in the food.
If I remember, it was the road.
I know the tar was one of the things,
right.
but it's just like, oh, Christ have mercy on us.
Yeah.
Oh, so anyway, I don't think Hobby Lobby caused my headache, but it didn't help.
Oh, sure.
And
the French's yellow mustard.
it was too bright.
It was shedding RMNA tartarazine.
Right?
That's what's going on. The aliens have put a shedding tartarazine into yellow plastic products as a way for Ukraine to take over Russia. I'm not kidding. Do we have another comment? We have several other comments that are far better than that. I was totally kidding. And go back to what we were talking about. And so let's get Don't Do That.
Thanks
who says,
for being with us tonight.
Oh, and I can't drag and drop
Don't do
in
that.
this
What is his
feature.
name? It's her name.
Don't do that.
Well, don't do that. Thanks for being with us tonight.
It says, is the point of the statistic that father brings the children to church or that father is there in church with the kids? I'm the organist and my wife brings the kids in a separate car. It's rare that I'm responsible for transporting them. I don't sit with them. So
pastor's dilemma as well.
Yeah, right. So the point is that the father believes it and talks about it in the home, actually. That's the point. The father believes it and talks about it in the lives of the people. It's his actual faith. He goes to church because he believes it. They see that. That works. He doesn't go to church. He goes to church and doesn't believe it. They see that. That doesn't work, right? If he goes and just sits there, I mean, they're the 20% that don't come back, right? If dad's checked out while he's there, Johnny's going to be checked out while he's there too. No, that's the point of it. So if Johnny's watching dad play the organ, Johnny's probably like, I sing into hymns to daddy. Like he's going to be all excited about it, right? And so, love that and then realize it will have strengths that other people don't get. You actually get a benefit. It's kind of like you get a superpower in terms of show off a little bit, right? In a good way, father heroship, that kind of thing. But then there's a weakness there too, in that they're going to be seen more, they're on display more, all of the pressure that brings to their life and the way that they have to kind of intellectualize the faith. So yeah, but the point is that the father's faith is the most powerful thing in the home because the father is the most powerful thing in the home. And that if the children are going to be led to be like someone in the spirit, it will be the father they're most likely to inhabit. Whereas, again, the law of the mother, the Torah, what she says, the church she goes to, they'll remain tied to that in all likelihood, even if they're nothing at all, right? You got many Catholics, time probably. I wonder if it's true for Jews too. Is that an anti-Semite of me to ask that? Something's true of Catholics and Jews at the same time? I would hope not. I would hope not. Shouldn't be. They certainly do not follow the Pope, and that's a good thing, I think, of the Talmudist. So that was one comment. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with the crazy. There was another question here way at the back I wanted to get to. Nick says this. He says, Pastor Fisk, I just had my first personal growth interview in seminary, and we talked about feeling inadequate for the task of being a pastor. Did you or other pastors feel this way going through seminary or currently? Every once in a while, I feel very strongly that I can't do this, but I know that my feelings lie. Just curious if it is common. Dr. Kuntz and I on Brief History of Power talked about imposter syndrome like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was pretty good. So if you haven't found that one, go back and look for it. I don't know the title of that one, but it deals with this a bit, and some of that conversation came out of a conversation I had with another pastor who's very successful, who admitted to me his own battle with feeling like he's filling the role but doesn't deserve it, that kind of thing. Now, Dr. Kuntz pointed out some of this is emotional maturity, in fact, and an awareness of self that comes with age, that younger people just have to figure out and grow into, but that the last generation and a lot of TV hasn't exactly helped us do, so we might be kind of stunted. And so in that regard, realize you may have more battles headed your way than the guys before you who set up the class, who have no idea what you're about to go through. So that's true too. Not to get you down, but to build you up then here. Look, pick up your cross and follow Jesus. That's every man's call. And then if you're going to submit yourself to ordination, if you're going to be sent out with nothing on your back, as it were, expect the devil to mark you. And in that marking of you, his job will be to convince you you're not a Christian. And he'll do it any way you can. If he can get you to sleep with the secretary, well, then he'll do it that way. If he can get you to follow conspiracy theories so you think the only answer is Donald Trump, well, then he'll do it that way. Right? I could say, get you to follow conspiracy theories so you think the only thing is to help you is Kamala Harris, but I didn't want to make a joke. Oh, there's so many Harris signs in one neighborhood right by the abortion clinic. It's the wealthy houses right by the abortion clinic, and it's hard to pray for them. I want to. I'm like, dear Jesus, protect them from their stupidity. When the fire comes, may it spare our neighborhoods. But like, dear Jesus, amen. And so I understand. I do not think the answer is politics at all. But I do see how all of these stories threaten the certainty of the pastor. I heard something said out loud by a district official at a district event, and I'm not trying to name names. I'm trying to point out how, like, yeah, everybody. Okay, so here's a guy who's like really in charge of stuff, right? And he's telling a story to the whole room of pastors that are there twice a year to hear him talk for 15 minutes, and then some other stuff goes on around it and all this. But he gets his 45 minutes or whatever. He's telling his story. And out of his mouth, as kind of the line of the story, comes the phrase, see, a Lutheran pastor is good for something. And everyone laughed. I didn't laugh a bit. I felt for him. I felt for his pain. You don't make that joke unless you wonder yourself at some point. And is it because the pews aren't staying as full as they should? Is it because all of her answers don't seem to fix it? I mean, look, I'm answering the question, is it normal to doubt your faith as a pastor and or seminarian? The answer is yes. Now, what does that look like? And do you grovel on the ground and like need someone to come pick you up? Well, if you can't get your own faith started, you probably shouldn't be a pastor. Right. So I've definitely been many times against the wall of what am I doing? I should not be doing this. I have no right to be here. But like after that battle of like moment is over, I know where my food is. I go get it. I eat what I need so I have strength and I fight again. Right. And so if that's not something you have, that's when I'm like, well, maybe don't be a pastor. No, you have to need that word. It's got to be food for you, not just sort of a game. And then expect to find, doubts in your feelings. Respect the office. Understand that the office is the office. It's got its own power. It's not up to you. All your job is to translate the word of God into the common tongue, like in real time, as often as you possibly can. And of course, you're not perfect for it. And you're not going to fulfill the role of modeling Christ the way that even Paul did. And Paul was quite imperfect in it. And so, like, don't expect too much of yourself. Trust in the power of the office. Scatter the seed, leave the tares, expect sparrows, trust the leaven, right? I mean, it's the same thing. Only just you get to live it all the time, whereas most people only will think about it for 15 to 30 minutes a day. Yeah. Your job is to try to get them to think of it a little bit more. 4 times a day, Sons of Solomon, get you going. There's also a comment from Dean who points out that there is brand new research article in the journal Science that when tartarazine is painted on the skin of mice, the skin becomes transparent,
Oh.
making studying the mice very easy. Sounds like something Horace would come up with.
Man.
That was not the one I thought I was looking for. That was interesting though.
That was really sad.
Where's this other one that came in?
Making studying.
Oh, Robot Burnout says across the street. That's where I do pray when I see these skeletons. I thank Jesus for my neighbors.
Yeah.
Thank you for my neighbors who don't put up stuff like this. Hallelujah, may it continue.
Amen.
Across the street, the neighbor has one of those giant skeletons in the front yard. It's been up since last October, and they put a new costume on it every holiday. Yeah, right.
Oh.
So again, who are they worshiping? That's the question. That's the question to me. Who are they worshiping? Do they know? Do they know? I think they might, but they might not. And that's what's most fascinating in the game StarFall 2029 is that's exactly it. Roll your character. Who do you live by? Philistine, Amaleki, or Moabite? Yeah. And how would you know the difference? Do we have questions from outside
We do.
the hopper? Yeah.
We do. It's one tonight from our brother in Christ, Matthew, and he would like to know what resources and materials we use for homeschooling.
Oh, right. He contacted me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't want to try to give an answer in such a useless space for that kind of thing. I'm gonna go find his question because I wanna get to it more directly. I can do it on the phone more fast. So why don't you start?
You don't have your phone with you.
Oh, because the kids took it. I'll be able to do it if I don't have to look at you and talk at the same time. Why don't you start by going over the method that I made up that I didn't make up?
Okay, so the method that we go after in general is where you would teach the child to read, and then they can teach themselves by reading any book, any resource on their own. It's called the Robinson Method. It was created by a widower out in California who had, I believe it was either like 7 or 8 children. His wife had died. They were homeschooling. He wanted to keep homeschooling. He was a doctor, or is a doctor, so could not spend the amount of time each day actually teaching lessons to his kids, but saw the value of them being home and doing the independent study. And so he developed a list of resources that you would have your child read at different ages, and that helps them, I think it's by the time they're in either junior high or high school, to be able to teach themselves, essentially pick up resources and comprehend them, learn from them, and then apply the knowledge. So that has been our goal. We've dabbled in the classical mindset. We were intrigued by the way that the classical educators break the brain's development down so that you actually focus on what the brain can do at different developmental stages. So you don't try to chain a high schooler into the grammatical, like, repetition.
What are the best
repetition.
resources you've found for that thinking? Because I know a lot of it's come from, we took the classical model as young parents with like a 2-year-old, right? Where we're beginning to teach reading and we're like, oh, classical.
Right.
And then I'm like, no, none of these homeschool programs that are just school at home. Let's not do that. Let's do reading and math and trust in the power of understanding. And we begin to do that. As we go, you continue to develop a whole nother edge of awareness to the kids' learning phases. And so you added to the grammar, logic, rhetoric, a much more complex understanding. And I'm wondering if you even just have developed that on your own, or if you've read a resource that did that for you.
I listened to people who did the reading, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. There's a very common homeschooling resource that that
the magazine that we're...
It's not a magazine. It's a book. It's not a textbook. It's like a book for parents when they're like, I think I might want to homeschool. It's one of those that comes up often in homeschooling circles, and its focus is the classical model. And so it does
You don't
help.
know the name of the book, though?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I'm thinking if I kind of jog people's memories, maybe somebody in the comments will be like, oh, it's this thing. There's Charlotte Mason she's older than this resource that people, it's like the classical mind, I think is what it's called.
Oh, that might be right.
I think that's what it's called.
Sure.
And that actually breaks down the different stages that your brain goes through. And so how do you teach a 5-year-old versus how, and what should you expect from them versus how do you teach a 12-year-old? And then how do you continue to inspire an 18-year-old? It's more about how to talk to your children, how to inspire them, how to engage their mind where their mind's development is. So like we've talked about this actually being applicable to how one would teach jujitsu or, well, let's just stay with jujitsu, for example. A tiny tot who's like 4, 5, 6 isn't going to be able to string together different moves on an intuitive level. They actually will need you to tell them like, do this move, and this move, and then they will just repeat that sequence over and over again like a little robot until you tell them a different sequence. It's not until they're actually closer to their late teens, like 16, 17, that they're going to start being able to string these moves together and be like, hey, I'm in this position. I think I'm going to try using this move.
Sounds like jiu-jitsu. It's great.
It makes watching the little ones really frustrating for adults who are unaware of the mind's development.
Of the mind, right? Yeah.
Because they're like, why didn't you think to go into this certain move? Like, why didn't you take his back? Well, because in the sequence of events that I have been taught as a tiny tot, taking their back wasn't there. And so I had to focus on scarf right at that moment, no matter what else was happening to me.
Yeah.
And so, that's just how we
Beam
engage
kind wasn't
them.
there. I had to focus on instinctual hunger because that's what was important to me.
Yeah. And so you do see this. You see this quite a bit if you take the time to study the different developmental stages, you can kind of put a little bit of that parental angst at ease when you run into the hurdle that your child is presenting as they don't understand.
So here's you can see it on the screen right now, I believe. Yeah, here is the picture that started the question. Oh, I lost it all. And the comment from Max is, this is my son, he's 13. He did this all himself. We homeschool. It's simpler than you think. Dividends paid are another order of magnitude altogether. Who cannot be proud of this? Who cannot look back on such a childhood without joy? What a time to be alive. And the picture is really something to me. I mean, I think back to my childhood, and the closest I ever got to this was a video game. But what he's got in a little area that's been cleared in our backyard is a forge. It's complete. It's in the beginning. He has a small forge that he bought from Amazon. It's quite quality, really, made of real metal.
With a hand crank.
Hand crank fire. It's fantastic. He's got it set up so that it won't fall over, and he's got an anvil and a tongs and an apron and
an apron that he
mallet.
sewed himself.
Did he do that? I didn't know that
he
part.
designed and sewed it all himself.
He's got his shirt off so he won't get any sparks on his t-shirts, and he is crafting wrought iron beams, rebar, into knives, which he hopes to sell, and he has actually already sold one of them, and they're not bad, really. They're pretty good. Yeah, but he made a leather sheath for it. His sheaths are getting better too. So he's just crafting away, and it's not on a screen. And why is he doing this? I've actually had to slow him down. Can you believe it? I mean, it's like, don't start the fire yet, son. Wait. But like, this is the beauty of our homeschool method at its takeoff moment. Right? We've talked about it before with our girls, how they've explored and taken off, and we've kind of looked at it from the back. But here he's in that year where he's really owning a couple of things and just going. And it's so beautiful. So then Matthew writes here, Pastor, my wife and I are working to start our own family. We'd like to homeschool one day as well. May I ask what materials or programs you use for your curriculum? And then, so that's where I think it really is important for me to get good at, we can go here for now. For me to get good at saying the Robinson method, like read up on the Robinson method, and then build from there. What you heard Meredith say again a moment ago is that the classical mind is not adverse to the Robinson method, but neither does all classical education really serve the goals of the classical mind. Much classical education is just another form of kid prison in which they're imprisoned at home rather than at prison with the other kids. And at that point, they'd rather be with the other kids.
Oh my goodness. Our oldest daughter, who's 19, has a pen pal. It's so sweet. It's like one of those younger mentor pen pals. So she's, let me think about this. She's a freshman. So what would that make her? 14. So our 19-year-old has a pen pal who is 14. And in a recent letter, the 14-year-old said, I started up homeschool. I have this course, this course, this course, this course. For the first time ever in my life, I hate it. And I said to my daughter when she read that out loud to me, I was like, well, no wonder I got bored listening to all those subjects she's studying. So what I didn't like, and you mentioned this about curriculums, is that it takes the fun out of life. It takes the organic nature out of being human. And it forces you and your children into this mold or model that maybe isn't as, it's not going to be as unique as you guys. It's not going to speak the language that your family speaks.
Yeah, that's right.
And so for us, we didn't do co-ops. We didn't actually do a strict curriculum. I peeked at Memoria Press just to kind of see okay, what should my third grader be able to read? And then I took that and I created my own list of books that were actually tailored specifically to each one of my own children. At that time that they were going through those lessons. The only thing that was hard and fast was Phyllis Schlafly's phonetics.
First reader.
Well, it's the first reader. That was what we used to teach our 2.5 to 3-year-olds how to read. And then
not the only way to teach. Phonics not the only way to teach, but phonics works and her phonics works.
It just does.
It just works.
It's
simple.
down
you just do it. Yep.
And do it. And it's not fun. None of us really liked it, but we all are really thankful we did it.
We have readers like you wouldn't believe.
And the stories that the kids will tell of the different things, the different comments that I would make, it's funny, it's humorous, it's humiliating all at the same time as a parent, but it did bring us together, bound us together more intensely over the years. And the other thing that was hard and fast was the mathematics. Those two things, getting your brain just exercising in that way every day. And we don't do summer break because
life doesn't take breaks.
Life doesn't take breaks, but it doesn't take breaks at the same time every year.
Yeah,
for our family, I wasn't always interested in bringing all the homeschool materials on trips. And so I said, you know what? If we're going to go on a certain type of trip that we can't really lug a huge bag of books along, well, let's just leave them at home and take a vacation, take a break.
Take a day off.
And so that was our organic break time whenever we needed it. But that meant during the summer months, we just kept on the schedule of homeschool.
Yeah. Well, our goal has been to encourage them to love learning.
Right.
And
lifelong learners is our goal.
You're never going to love discipline till you choose to love it for the sake of its result. You're not going to love the push-up because it feels good till you realize the pain feels good because of the result.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to discipline them at a young age. You have to take their hand and walk them through some basic tools. What tools do you give them? Social studies. Okay. So with the Robinson method, and then as our application of it is, we're going to give them the tools that will be all the tools they ever need. And then they can build all the tools they want from there. And like my kid's building the forge. And it's not like he doesn't read. He's writing a book or 3. He draws and the rest of it, getting him to study directly is
so that one's
chore.
been tricky because of the activity that a boy brain just brings to the table. So the approach that I've taken with him recently that's been very successful is and would you believe it was raising goats?
Oh, look at that. Okay.
I got him all manner of different kinds of books on raising goats.
Images of Drew riding his goat. He wants to go ride again.
And why did I get all sorts of types of materials? Well, because different learners need different things.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody might really appreciate learning from a heavily pictorial type resource.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else might really thrive in a more descriptive, like autobiography
it's
type
so
resource.
True on so many levels. There's enough from astronomy to psychology to whatever. Something in the same vein recently that I've been calculus. Looking at multiple resources for yourself is a really good idea, so that you don't even have to decide why you like one better. You're just gonna be like, okay, I hate that one. I'm going back to this one. I'm going back to this one again. I'm going to buy this one then for real. And so then what I think you're doing with the kids is you're applying that to, you go to the library, you bring home a big pile of books on the topic, and then you watch what they stick with, and you learn what they're looking for and start to search for that more directly later. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's key. The other thing that I do at the library is I go to the library and I pick out things that I think are really important for them to know about. And then I strategically place those library books around the house.
Where food is.
Typically it's in the kitchen. Yep, on the kitchen counter, where they're going to sit at, we have like a buffet kind of setup. So they sit at the stools at the buffet and chat with me while I'm cooking. And then, there's this book about, I don't know, early European history or building cathedrals. And then before I know it, they're opening the book, they're flipping through, they're talking about the pictures they're looking at, they're talking about things they've read. And so lifelong learners, you place the opportunities at their feet and then watch what they gravitate towards and inspire, stoke that fire, fan it into flames so that they can then continue on and become experts eventually. And that was the thing about the raising goats is I told my son, I said, well, what do you really want to, what's something that you're excited about doing as an adult? And he was like, I want to raise goats. And I said, you know what? Once you're there at that point in life, you're not going to have the time to do the research. So now's the time to soak it up. Now's the time to invest in becoming the expert so that when you're trying to support a family, trying to have a great relationship with your wife and all your children, you don't have to go and spend more time doing research, but it's just kind of there inside of you for some reason. You know what a goat needs for a habitat. And so,
or that you find the things you want to do, like maybe you decide after 3 months you don't want to raise goats. And,
yeah, exactly.
But you don't want to be stuck in that kind of question in your 40s if you can help it.
Yeah.
And you'd rather be established with who you are and what you're doing. So
we call it the explore phase. I tell all the kids.
Explore those things now and go hard for 3 months, go hard for 6 months, go hard for a year, and then quit.
Exactly.
Quit, never do it again, be done. Because you decide, this is enough for me on this. And then other things, don't quit, but leave it as a secondary. Walk with it and then pick something else up and explore. And so, to see him really jump into the the Forge concept as his first like non-Lego, non-drone, non-airsoft self-investment, right? Like, and those weren't horrible things. I was glad to have a boy and to see my boy do things that I would have.
Yeah.
I wanted to do so badly. In the versions that I had, and they were never available to me. Any of those things, really. The barest taste. And so my boy being able to live those as a boy is great.
Absolutely.
As a father, you want him to step toward the things that are in the real. And you're right. Someone could say airsoft training's in the real. I'm like, yeah, I really don't want that vocation for my son. I told him just yesterday, and as I dropped him off at CAP, which is Civil Air Patrol, son, law enforcement's an honorable profession, and there are good men who do it, and we need good men to do it. That's if you are going to be that man, be that man. I don't know if you're going to be that man. He said, I don't think so either. So, okay. And then let's pray for the ones in our church that are there. But to see him, why don't I want him just shooting people for a living? I think militarily he would have the chops to lead. And so there's a whole different thing. But personally, having the mind that I have, I want him to create. I want him to design. I want him to build. And he can do that with men. He can do that with an army if he wants to. I don't know, whatever. But like an anvil and some iron in his hand with the fire at 13. I mean, how could it? Who doesn't dream of this for their boy? And I didn't plan it.
Nope.
I didn't plan it. I didn't even try on that one. And it's interesting. I feel bad hearing about Mr. Robinson's theory coming about as a widower, because it was all about his like integrity and zeal. And for me, it really hasn't been about laziness. Like I just saw from the very start, there's no way we can do what homeschooling entails and successfully have a life and a marriage. And there's really not a way that we are going to or want to send them off to be trained by anybody else. I mean, and this is really about laziness again. Like we could, I mean, it's fully possible that at 3:00 I meet the kids. I'm father, I'm pastor. I give the rest of my life at 3:00 to 7:00. It's my kids and me. They get home from school. It's all they get. You don't get me during that time because I got to deprogram. Yeah, could have done that. That would have been more work. Would have been harder. Our schedule would have been tighter. It would have been, put so much pressure on us in so many ways. So I say laziness, not entirely out of shame, but a little bit, but also with some, I think, foresight involved. It's more, I say laziness to degrade myself as a means of selling the idea a little bit too, I suppose. But what I wanted was a simple path that didn't offer resistance, so I could focus on the things that mattered fighting for.
Well, and also when you start, inevitably, when you start homeschooling your first child, you're still in that family growth. Like you're having more babies. You've got lots of little ones running around. Still, it's not a very peaceful, sit down, study, focus kind of environment at home. And so, for me personally, I was looking for more of an organic and doable system that I wouldn't feel chained down by.
Absolutely.
I appreciate being outside. And so for me to be able to have the lessons either out on the front lawn or in the kitchen or even just on the couch while I'm nursing another baby, like that was huge.
We've never had a classroom.
No.
We have a desk room.
Now we have a desk room,
which is more of a
kids.
workstation room than a desk room. It's not a classroom. It's a place where they each have owned space that's theirs, that we have bought or they have bought since then, a desk for them to do whatever they do with it. And we teach them cleanliness and order, and it's a beautiful room. I love that room. I go in there and just stand and look at it. And they look at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, admiring you. I'm staring at your stuff. It's really cool. But no classroom. No, everybody sit down and do it together, sometimes with one book for a season, right? And that's usually to jumpstart an individual and to bring, a review in or to, someone else wants to be involved.
Oftentimes with the younger, so we've transitioned to more independence. We've gotten to that stage of the Robinson method where we truly do have the self learners now. But at the beginning stage, especially for our son, his brain was not interested in opening a book and exploring it himself. And so to read him a classic, I would sit down and I would start reading, and I would read probably the first 3 chapters of most of the books that he read as an early reader. And then once I got to chapter 3, he just couldn't wait to figure out what was going to happen next. And so he would pick up the book and go on ahead of me while I was caring for a sibling, putting younger sister down for bed, or, whatever it was. So, I found, and then I find also with our older boys across the street at Hebron, that walking along, a lot of leadership comes with walking alongside of somebody. Something that is inspiring so the curiosity of a child coming to you in the kitchen can be then harnessed and inspired if you include them in some way or another. I want to help you, and then give them a task of some kind. It doesn't even have to be real. Hold this wooden spoon. It's really important for you to hold this wooden spoon while I chop these onions. And they will feel like they're doing an important task that contributes to the activity that you're doing at that moment. So, but then that will give them the incentive to come back over and over again, because they felt needed and wanted and like they had a purpose there. Rather than telling a child, go make your bed. Well, let's go make your bed. Let's go make your bed. And that means you walk into their bedroom with them and you show them how to take all the messy covers off and put them back on straight and fluff their pillows or arrange their little stuffed animals. It also means sometimes doing it for them, so that like when they're gone away at a friend's house, you walk in, you make their bed, so they come back and there's a little note. I love you. Love mother. Love father. And they come back and they see what a made bed looks like. So they have the example. So when over at Hebron, when a new guy's going to come, I come in and I'm like, okay, here we go. And we totally give it a once over cleaning so that the guy who comes in sees what it's supposed to look like. And then, over the course of time, it shifts and changes and whatever. The standards become whatever they are. But then, another guest is coming and we clean it all up again.
So much of that is a learning experience for us, and it's been good. How do you raise a pack of men without stepping on their toes?
It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough, but it's been good. And in that way, we're going to be right back with the BJJ moment. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a Japanese art form perfected by, I believe, some Germans in Brazil and made world famous as the foundational grappling art to combine with all of your mixed martial arts. That is, do you want to know Kung Fu? You can learn karate and you can take your taekwondo, but if you don't know jiu-jitsu, when you get in the ring, it won't matter. When you know jiu-jitsu, what matters is what you build on top of it after you get in the ring. The mat, the threshing floor at the Hebron Collegium is there for you to step off the mat and build onto it with some Psalms and Proverbs, some trust in Jesus Christ and his holy name. What happens on the mat is a whole host of things, from mindfulness and bodily mechanics, meditation that occurs just by de facto of the practice, all the way up to testing your limits, exhausting your body, tension training like Bowflex used to do. It'll give you a kind of strength that you didn't know you could have, flexibility as well. So all of that doesn't mean jump onto the jiu-jitsu mat with anyone anywhere. It does take some getting used to, and there are schools and there are schools. But at the Hebrew Collegium, what we're focused on is, again, helping young men learn to trust each other and trust the scriptures together. Tonight, we mentioned earlier that they were hanging out, and we got some shots that were taken of the event. There we got a couple of guys with a back take. They're probably practicing escaping the back. You can see... again, number of them out there, they're doing this all on their own after a little bit of coaching and teaching on my part, taking their Friday night. They could be out doing stupid stuff, but instead, well, is this stupid? They're choking each other. Oh, that's a good one right there. They're getting hot. The triangle from the mount. And all of this, them building brotherhood, all of this, them knowing what it's like to run into another body and to be able to, how do I say this, have contact with that body. When you never touch other people or all you ever do is a handshake or a high five, if somebody grabs you in more than a hug, you won't know what to do. All these boys do. Now they do. It's that simple. You do it a couple times and you're just not going to respond the same. There's so many good things that are coming out of this. Again, we have 4 residents at the Collegium at the moment, a 5th on the way. 2 of them head out this December. We got room for more this spring if you're looking for a quarter, if you're looking for a month retreat, young men, older men too. We don't mind having you come through and having a father in the house for a little while, a week, a weekend, those kinds of things. And we got our first lock-in for next year's fall, it looks like. First student lock-in in for next year's fall. This is the earliest we've had a lock-in, which means that ideally, last year we didn't have 4 guys signed up at this time. So we get all that funding together like we're gonna, right, everybody, in Jesus' name, and we'll keep this thing going. For tonight's jiu-jitsu moment, if that wasn't enough, I want to talk about the lever and the fulcrum. Okay, so jiu-jitsu is about physics. Physics is great. I like Newtonian physics, I like Einsteinian physics, and I like Fiskian physics, which nobody knows about yet. It's about the 4th dimension or whatever. It won't involve levers and fulcrums, or will it? The lever and the fulcrum is an obvious part of our material physical reality. It predates Newton, and it goes back, I believe, to Archimedes. And the idea here is that if you have a stick and a rock, you can move the rock with the stick even if you can't move the rock. Okay? So you give me a stick and there's a rock I can't move, I can move the rock if I got a stick with the power of leverage. That is seesawing, gravity enforced in a strange way. I don't know how else to describe it, but you have a central point called the fulcrum, and you get your lever over that point and you lift, and the teeter-totter effect makes you able to lift on the far end of the lever more than you could on the short end of the lever. And if you lengthen your handles, it increases your power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Shorten your handle. Lengthen your handle, excuse me. Shorten your, there's a name for the term on the other side of the fulcrum. So that whole idea, which again, if you just imagine the teeter-totter to begin with, or someone trying to move a rock with a stick, is how jiu-jitsu works. And the lever's your arm or your leg, and the rock's your shoulder or your hip. Although it works better, it's more cool than that. Like, if I grab your hand, your wrist, let's say I grab your wrist. Well, now, yeah, indeed, the lever is your arm to your shoulder, but it's actually got 2 levers built into it. Your lever is made of 2 levers. If I get your hand, then there's 3 levers with the wrist thrown in. And each lever gets you to the next fulcrum. So if I grab your hand and twist it, I can grab your wrist. If I twist your wrist, I can grab your elbow. If I twist your elbow, I can grab your shoulder. That's called leverage. And that's how I get to your back, and you don't even know what happened. That's jiu-jitsu. This has been your jiu-jitsu moment. It's about physics. We'll be right back. We've done all our call to actions for tonight, giving you a bunch of stuff. Roll the character you want to be. Role play the person you're going to be. Be pro-grace. Be pro-Bible. Be pro-marriage. Be pro-family. Be pro-life. Know that you are set apart for a reason, and that is to stand as an upright and blameless Christian in the kingdom of God in this present age. Join your tribe. Find the gathering. Avoid the high places. Trust that you're not alone because the angels are with you. How you doing on quest number 8.9.24? Scatter the seed. Leave the tares. Expect sparrows. Trust the leaven. Buy that field. I haven't said buy that field for a couple weeks now. Seek pearls. I don't think I've gotten that one at all. Remember nets. tend your nets. I could do that more. Scatter the seeds, still out there, still coming your way. You may dash, duck, grapple, pray, hide, ready, search, stabilize, aid, use, make, break, offend, cast out, and raise up. This has been StarFall 2029. Second star to the right and straight on to a poo face. We do live in a sci-fi, steampunked, Wild West wasteland, cosmic horror, tribulation, and machine-induced madnesses, pollution-laden systems, and a white tower, great society, land grab casinos, sleepwalking your neighbors to destruction with handheld brainwashing devices, feminine victimhood, communist storytelling as power, and a cult of popcorn and politics lapping up every next revelation. The talking image says, I see it this way. There's two possible futures. One, we're here for a very long time. There's a lot of time left. Or two, we're right at the end. There's another way to say that without having to get into blood moons. And that is, you either have to recognize that in the course of history, for the planet, refracting forward the Old Testament narrative, we are either in the times of Isaiah or Jeremiah. I hope we're in the times of Isaiah. Do you understand why? I'm praying for peace. I'm praying for repentance. I'm praying for life. I'm praying for regeneration. I'm praying for revival. I'm praying for the Christian church on earth to show what it was made to do one more time before the very end. Because if it's Jeremiah's time, it's over. It's over. We're done. We're done. It's over. The tree is brown. I just don't think the tree's brown. I keep looking and I see green. I see green everywhere I look, except in the Pope's mouth. But I see green almost everywhere else. I see Catholics that are confessing Christ. I see Baptists that are praising Jesus and saying they left it in the water. I see Lutherans arguing with themselves, but hoping that someone will hear them talk about justification because we're right. So again, roll the character you plan to be. Seek the blamelessness and uprightness of the scriptures as they impute to you the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Pray with the psalmist, turn my eyes from looking at worthless things and revive me in your way. It's not for you to fuel the fire. Just train your engine on what God is doing. Don't expect to be the author of your own spirit. Believe that he is giving you his. And I think that brings me all the way to the bottom of that pack. Oh, here we go. The nice thing about having an ark to build is that there is precious little time for shame. Jesus Christ has risen from the dead. That makes you immortal now. He's not going to be long anyway. The water seals it. This feeds it. This feeds it. Oh, dear Jesus in heaven, one day I'll remember what to say. You found us. You'll find us again soon. Rock on and hallelujah.
Was that worth $1? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?